Alex thought he had the perfect life, a loving wife, 2 children, and a home filled with memories. But when he discovered that his wife, Sarah, had been secretly cheating on him for 7 years, and that his son, Lucas, wasn't even his biological child, the perfect world he had built shattered in an instant. As the truth unraveled, Alex found himself questioning everything he knew about love, trust, and family. What happens when the person you trust most betrays you, in the worst way possible? This is the story of a man who lost it all, and the devastating consequences that followed. Alex and Sarah's marriage was the epitome of what many people dreamt about. They were high school sweethearts, married young, and built a life that seemed to be filled with nothing but success. Alex, a driven and ambitious entrepreneur, worked tirelessly to provide for his family. He was proud of the business empire he had built from the ground up. Sarah, his wife, was a loving mother to their 2 children, Lily and Lucas. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. Their home was large, beautiful, and located in a quiet, affluent suburb. Their social media accounts were filled with photos of family vacations, birthday parties, and life milestones that others envied. Everyone who knew them spoke highly of the couple. They were always seen at charity events, smiling in photos, and attending social gatherings together. They had built a life that many people admired, especially when it came to their children. Lily, the eldest, had just started school and was already showing signs of brilliance. Lucas, their youngest, was a few years younger, and had a playful, innocent energy about him. The 2 children seemed to complete their picture-perfect family. However, behind closed doors there were small cracks in the facade. At first they were barely noticeable. Small disagreements here and there, miscommunications that could be chalked up to the busy life they led. But over time, the cracks widened. Alex found himself spending more and more hours at work. His business was growing rapidly, and though it brought in wealth, it also created distance between him and Sarah. She had once been the woman he could rely on for emotional support, but now she seemed distant and preoccupied. Their once spontaneous, loving moments had become fewer and farther between. Sarah, for her part, began to feel the weight of the life she had built with Alex. On the outside, she seemed to have everything: a beautiful home, 2 healthy children, and a husband who provided everything she needed. Yet the loneliness she felt was becoming harder to ignore. Alex's long hours at work meant that their intimate moments had become rare, and their conversations were often surface level. The spark that once lit their marriage was slowly fading, replaced by a quiet, unspoken frustration. Despite these growing tensions, Sarah tried to keep up appearances. She maintained the house, took care of the children, and attended social gatherings with Alex, all while harboring feelings of isolation. The more time passed, the more Sarah began to feel disconnected from her husband. She couldn't pinpoint when the change had happened, but it was as if they were simply going through the motions, no longer truly connecting. It was during this time that Sarah met Daniel. He was charismatic, charming, and made her feel seen and desired in a way that Alex hadn't in years. At first, their relationship started innocently, a few casual conversations, some light flirting, but before long, Sarah found herself drawn to him in ways she hadn't expected. She had never imagined herself stepping outside her marriage, but Daniel seemed to awaken something inside her that she had long since buried. He listened to her, made her laugh, and made her feel alive again. In the beginning, the affair was something Sarah kept tightly guarded, a secret that was hers alone, but as the months passed, it became something much more significant. She justified her actions to herself, telling herself that Alex had been neglecting her for years, that she had tried to be the perfect wife and mother, but something had been missing. She convinced herself that her actions were a natural response to the emotional neglect she felt. But even as the affair continued, a part of Sarah knew she was crossing a line, one she could never go back from. Meanwhile, Alex remained oblivious to the growing distance between them. He focused on his work, his business, and his efforts to secure a better future for his family. He took pride in providing everything they could ever need. He believed their life was on track, but the truth was that something was slipping through his fingers. The cracks in their relationship had begun to spread far wider than he realized, and he was blind to the fact that the life he thought was perfect was beginning to unravel from within. Alex's suspicions began to take root slowly. At first they were just passing thoughts, nagging feelings that something wasn't quite right in his marriage, but he pushed them aside. He loved Sarah. He had built a life with her, and their family was everything to him. But as time went on, the subtle changes in Sarah's behavior became harder to ignore. Her distance, the unexplained late nights, and the small signs that she wasn't as present as she once had been. These things began to pile up. One afternoon, Alex found himself sitting in their living room, scrolling through his phone, when he stumbled upon a photo that would change everything. It wasn't anything overt, just a picture of Sarah and a man he didn't recognize posted by one of their mutual friends. The photo itself seemed innocent enough, just a snapshot of a group outing. But something about it caught Alex's attention. Sarah's smile was too wide, her eyes too bright. It wasn't the smile of a woman at ease with her life. It was the smile of someone caught up in something they didn't want others to know. The man in the photo was standing close to her, his hand resting casually on her lower back. There was an intimacy in the way they were positioned that made Alex's stomach churn. He hadn't seen this man before. He didn't recognize him from any of the events they had attended together, and yet there he was, too close, too comfortable. A wave of unease washed over Alex, and he began to obsess over the image, re-examining every detail. The man's name didn't come to him, and the thought of Sarah with someone else lingered in his mind. The next few days were a blur of confusion and suspicion. Alex began to pay closer attention to Sarah's actions. Her late nights had become more frequent, and she was often distracted when they were together. When he asked her where she had been, her answers were vague. Meetings with friends, catching up on errands, things she hadn't done in the past. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. But what? It wasn't until he found the phone bill that the truth started to unravel. There were numerous late-night calls, all made from Sarah's phone to a number he didn't recognize. He tried to brush it off, telling himself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a business call or a friend. But the more he saw, the more the puzzle pieces fell into place. He started to look at Sarah's phone without her knowing. He knew it was wrong, but his gut told him it was the only way to find the truth. One evening, when Sarah was taking a bath, Alex couldn't help himself. He unlocked her phone, his heart racing with every second he spent scrolling through her messages. At first, it was just harmless conversations, texts with friends, updates about the children, the normal back and forth of a busy household. But then, he came across a thread that made his heart stop. It wasn't just friendly banter or casual conversation. It was intimate. The messages between Sarah and the man she had been spending time with were laced with flirtation, innuendo, and coded language. It was clear that their relationship was more than just a friendship, and the more Alex read, the more it became apparent that Sarah had been hiding something much deeper. She wasn't just texting this man, she was emotionally invested in him. The messages spoke of stolen moments together, secret rendezvous, and plans to meet up again. Each word confirmed his worst fear. Sarah was having an affair. The man's name, Daniel, appeared repeatedly in the messages. As Alex read on, he learned that this affair had been going on for years, hidden behind the smile of the woman he thought he knew. His hands shook as he continued reading, each message revealing more about the depth of Sarah's betrayal. She had kept this secret from him for 7 years. For all that time, Alex had believed he was living a perfect life, with a loving wife and 2 children. But now everything he thought he knew felt like a lie. The pain of that realization was almost too much to bear. It wasn't just the affair. It was the betrayal of trust, the lies Sarah had told him, and the way she had hidden this from him for so long. His mind raced as he tried to process the magnitude of what he had just discovered. The life he had built, the love he thought they shared was all a carefully constructed facade. Alex knew he couldn't confront Sarah just yet. He needed more proof, something undeniable to show her that he knew everything. But even as he plotted his next move, the weight of the truth pressed heavily on him. The life he had been living was a lie, and he didn't know how to begin picking up the pieces. The family he had worked so hard to protect had been torn apart in an instant, and he couldn't see a way back. Days passed, and Alex found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion, and sadness all mixed together, leaving him feeling like a stranger in his own life. He couldn't look at Sarah the same way anymore. Every time she smiled at him or asked about his day, it felt like a mask, a cruel reminder of the lies she had been feeding him for years. The trust he had placed in her was shattered, and the man he had been living alongside was suddenly a stranger. Every conversation felt hollow, every shared moment tainted by the secret she had kept hidden. But Alex wasn't ready to confront her just yet. He needed time to think, to piece together what his next steps would be. He had to gather more evidence to make sure he wasn't jumping to conclusions. Sarah was a skilled manipulator. He knew that much. He had to be certain that what he had uncovered wasn't just a misunderstanding. The text messages, while damning, could have been taken out of context. He needed more. The following week, Alex hired a private investigator. He didn't want to do it, but he knew it was the only way to get the truth without directly confronting Sarah. The investigator was discreet and professional, following Sarah without her knowledge, documenting her movements and providing Alex with detailed reports of her activities. What came next only confirmed his worst fears. The investigator captured images of Sarah meeting Daniel in various locations, sometimes in secluded parks, sometimes at upscale hotels. The meetings were always brief, but they were intimate, revealing a level of comfort between them that Alex had never shared with Sarah in years. The evidence was undeniable. Sarah had been living a double life. She had carefully woven a web of lies that had kept Alex in the dark, convinced that everything was fine. Meanwhile, she had been seeing Daniel, a man who was not only an affair partner, but had also been the father of her youngest child, Lucas. Alex's head swam with the implications. All this time, Lucas had never been his biological son. He had been raising a child that belonged to another man, and Sarah had never once told him the truth. The more Alex thought about it, the more the pain sank in. He remembered all the moments he had spent with Lucas, the sleepless nights, the first steps, the school events. He had loved that boy with everything he had. The bond they shared had felt as real as anything, but now it felt like a cruel joke. He had been the father in every sense, except biology. His heart broke for the child who had no idea that his father wasn't his father at all. In the silence of his own thoughts, Alex began to feel the weight of his decision. He couldn't live a lie any longer, and he couldn't let Sarah's deceit go on. The life he had built with her, the family he had cherished, was built on betrayal. He had to confront her. He had to bring everything into the open, no matter how painful it would be. He needed answers, and he needed closure. The truth had been buried for far too long, and it was time to face it. It was then that Alex decided to go further. He arranged for a paternity test for both of the children. It wasn't something he wanted to do, but after everything, he knew he needed definitive proof. The results would either confirm the worst of his suspicions or provide him with a sliver of hope that he could somehow fix things. But in his gut, Alex already knew what the results would show. Lucas wasn't his son. The thought of it made his stomach churn, but he couldn't ignore the facts anymore. As the days passed, the tension between Alex and Sarah grew. They barely spoke, the distance between them palpable. Sarah sensed that something was different, but Alex kept his emotions under tight control. He couldn't let her know what he was planning. Not yet. She still had no idea that he knew everything. He was holding on to his last shred of control, waiting for the moment when the truth would come crashing down on her. In the meantime, Alex focused on the children. He kept up the appearance of a normal, functioning father. He didn't want them to feel the strain, especially Lucas, but deep down, Alex knew the truth would eventually come to light. And when it did, it would destroy everything. It was only a matter of time. And Alex knew there would be no easy way to fix the damage. It was a quiet evening when he finally decided to confront her. The children were at a friend's house for the night, giving Alex the opportunity to speak to Sarah without interruption. He waited until they were alone, the weight of the silence in the room almost suffocating. Sarah sat on the couch, flipping through a magazine, unaware that her world was about to collapse. Alex stood in the doorway, taking a deep breath before walking in. His steps were deliberate, as though he was walking toward something inevitable, something that had to happen. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. She looked up, surprised at the tone in his voice. Sarah froze, her face draining of color. She didn't speak, but her eyes widened with fear. "I know about the affair," Alex continued, his gaze intense. "I know you've been seeing him for years, and I know Lucas isn't my son. You've been lying to me for all this time." The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah's eyes flickered with panic, her lips trembling as she tried to find the words. "Lucas is Daniel's son, not mine. How could you do this to me?" Sarah's face was a mixture of guilt, fear, and disbelief. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes darted around the room, as though looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to run now. Alex had all the proof, there was no denying it. "I'm sorry, Alex," she finally whispered, her voice shaking. "I never meant for it to go this far, it just happened. I didn't know how to stop it." Alex's anger flared. "You didn't know how to stop it?" he repeated, his voice rising. "For 7 years, Sarah. For 7 years you've been lying to me, cheating on me, and raising my son as if he were yours. You didn't think that would destroy me? That it would destroy us?" Tears began to well up in Sarah's eyes, but Alex didn't want to comfort her. He didn't know if he ever could again. "I've been trying to protect the family," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you the truth." "The truth?" Alex scoffed. "The truth was hidden in every lie you told me. You didn't think I would ever find out?" Alex stood there feeling a rush of emotions flood through him. Anger, heartbreak, disbelief. But above all, he felt betrayed. Not just by the affair, but by the years of lies that had built a foundation under his feet. A foundation he thought was strong, but was crumbling before him. He had invested everything in this marriage, in this family, and now it was all falling apart. He couldn't bear to stay there any longer, not in the house where his world had been shattered. As he walked out, the heavy weight of his decision settled in. He had no idea what the future would hold, but one thing was clear. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. In the days that followed, Alex found himself spiraling through a maze of emotions. The confrontation with Sarah had been everything he expected, painful, raw, and heartbreaking. But it didn't bring him the relief he had hoped for. The truth was out, but it didn't heal the wounds. Instead, it left him feeling more lost than ever. He had asked for answers, but the answers only led to more questions. What was next? What would his life look like after everything that had been revealed? Sarah, for her part, seemed to retreat further into herself. She was devastated, but not because she had been caught. No, it was because the weight of her lies had finally crushed the life she had built. In the weeks that followed, she tried to salvage some semblance of normalcy, but it was clear that everything had changed. She was no longer the woman Alex had married. She was no longer even the woman he had thought she was. The affair had stripped away any illusion of the life they had shared, and all that was left were the shattered pieces of a marriage that had been held together by deceit. But Alex knew that the destruction wasn't just in their marriage, it was in his entire life. The image of his family, the life they had shared, had been built on a lie. He had loved Lucas as his own, but the child wasn't his. His bond with the boy had been a lie too. As Alex processed this, he couldn't shake the ache in his chest. His love for Lucas was real, undeniable. But how could he move forward with that knowledge? How could he continue to raise the boy, knowing that another man, Daniel, was his true father? The questions ate away at him. His friends and family, while sympathetic, didn't truly understand the depths of his pain. They couldn't know how deeply it hurt to realize that everything in his life had been a mirage, an illusion crafted by the woman he had trusted the most. He had shared his dreams, his fears, and his hopes with Sarah. But now he realized he had shared them with someone who had been deceiving him all along. He had been vulnerable, and she had exploited that vulnerability. There were moments when Alex found himself staring at his children, wondering how he would explain everything to them. Would they ever understand? What would happen to their family? Could he still be the father to Lucas, the boy who had been with him through so many milestones? The thought of walking away from him was unbearable, but so was the thought of raising him without knowing the full truth. Eventually, Alex decided he couldn't stay in the house they had shared for so many years. The memories of their life together felt suffocating, and every room seemed to echo with the lies that had been whispered there. He needed space. He needed time to figure out who he was now after everything had come crashing down. The life he had been living was gone, and all that was left was the painful process of rebuilding. He moved into a small apartment, a place that felt foreign and cold, but at least offered him the solitude he craved. The silence there was deafening, but in a way, it gave him the room to think. He would often take walks through the city, trying to make sense of the pieces of his life that remained. He found solace in the quiet moments, in the hours where he could process everything on his own terms. Sarah, meanwhile, began to face the consequences of her actions. Her relationship with Daniel became more strained as the reality of their situation hit them both. What had been a passionate affair was now a complicated mess. Daniel, too, had his own life to reckon with. He began to rebuild his life piece by piece, though it was never easy. The guilt of abandoning Lucas, the thought of leaving a child who had called him father for so long, continued to haunt him. He tried to keep a relationship with Lucas, but it was no longer the same. Every interaction was tainted by the truth of the boy's parentage. Still, Alex did his best to be there for him, though it was clear that his role in Lucas's life would never be the same again. He wasn't just a father figure anymore. He was a man who had been betrayed, and the truth could never be erased. In time, Alex started seeing a therapist, something he had never considered before. As for Sarah, her life too continued to unravel. She had lost everything: the trust of her husband, the stability of her family, the facade of a perfect life. She had betrayed Alex in the worst way possible, and now she had to live with the consequences. The affair had cost her far more than she had ever imagined. But Alex had come to understand something in the months following the betrayal. Sometimes the greatest tragedy wasn't just the lies or the betrayal. It was the realization that the person you thought you knew was gone, and there was no way to get them back. In the end, Alex came to terms with the fact that healing would take time, but he was determined to move forward, no matter how difficult the journey. He was no longer the man he had been before, but he would rebuild, stronger, wiser, and with a deeper understanding of what it meant to trust and love again.